Okay, so we had all the details on the new Tacoma drop last night. I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the weeds on this. They gave us a lot to think about. There are 8 different models, there are 2 different bed types, 2 different cab types. We're gonna go ahead and go through that. This is gonna be a little bit more of a detailed review where we talk about the suspension in a little more detail so you can understand what you're getting into in some of the different models. So let's go ahead and jump into that. First, right off the bat, I know you're all here probably to talk about the TrailHunter and the TRD Pro editions. There's 8 different editions from the SR, the SR5, the TRD Pre-Runner, the TRD Sport, the TRD Off-Road, TrailHunter, and TRD Pro. Okay, so one of the big beefs with the Tacoma was always that you felt like a child sitting inside of it because the seats were so low. You know what I'm talking about. When you were driving a Tacoma, it kind of felt like this. Well, the good news is they actually made the cab taller and they raised the seats higher. So now your sitting position in your Tacoma will actually make you feel like an adult. We have a fully boxed frame now. The rear suspension on all these higher end models are all linked suspension and sprung, not with leaf springs anymore, but with an actual spring. So there's quite a bit of changes to talk through. Let's jump into the TRD Pro and the TrailHunter edition, and I'm going to talk through one of the smarter things that I think Toyota has done. They tried to make a lot of people happy with these models, very obviously. In fact, I think they tried to make everyone happy. Let's go ahead and go through some of these options. So if you look at like the TRD Pro, obviously they're giving you now a manual option and an automatic transmission option. Through all those different series, which is pretty amazing. They also gave us a much more powerful engine. So the power plant on this, you have the lower end fleet kind of vehicles that still have about a 228 horsepower engine, which is really similar to the current V6s. On the higher end models, we now have a 2.4 liter turbo 4 engine that is offering a whopping 326 horsepower, but the really surprising number is that 465 pounds of torque. That's class leading torque. You're gonna feel that on the hills. In fact, Toyota claims that you can go on the highway on an 8% grade and you will not even have to downshift, which is incredible if you have ever been a Tacoma owner before. The idea of going over a hill at all and not downshifting is pretty far-fetched. So it's a pretty big upgrade. You're gonna have a lot more power. You're gonna have a lot stiffer frame to work with. That stiffer frame and that power allows for a higher payload. So your payload's gonna be over 1,700 pounds, and then your towing capacity goes up to 6,500. They did this incredibly brilliant thing where instead of trying to give us one super off-road vehicle, they realized that it doesn't work that way. When you build a build for high-speed desert off-road and you build a build for overlanding, these are 2 very different things. It's impossible to build a vehicle that is excellent at both. It's kind of like when I did my video on all-terrain tires. Do you want it to work really great on snow or do you want it to work really great on mud? You're not going to get both from one tire. Same thing. So they gave us a TRD Pro that is really geared towards that high-speed desert racing. You can see that from the shocks. You can see that from, they kept the truck still lightweight. So you put excellent high-speed shocks on it, but you actually get that performance because you didn't bury it with weight. Then you have the TrailHunter edition where they said, it can't give you the same high-speed shock because you're going to load this down with all of your gear for all of your long trips. So they gave us a different type of suspension on that. Also excellent, but excellent suspension made to handle heavy-duty weight. And that's an old man EMU setup that has remote reservoirs. It's set up for all those additional pounds and rooftop tents. From the factory now, you can get something specifically straight out of the gate made for overlanding or made for high-speed desert. Those are the differences between those 2 models. If you really are looking at going overlanding, you really should consider a TrailHunter instead of a TRD Pro now. When you get into the shocks, some of these shocks, like the QS3 shocks that are on the TRD Pro, these are Fox shocks that have been out for a little while actually, and they're very popular in the side-by-side market and in like the snow sled market. And the reason is that they're high performance, they can handle those big hits, but also you don't have to be a scientist to run them and to be able to adjust them because these are adjustable shocks. You want to be able to get out of your vehicle, adjust it really quick, and know what you're doing. So QS3 stands for Quick Switch, has 3 different modes. You have a soft mode, a medium mode, and a hard mode. These shocks are internal bypass shocks. I just did a long travel video on my Tundra where I have the 2.5-inch external bypass shocks. These are big shocks that have the external tubes to allow bypass. So these shocks have that, but it's internal to the shock. These are high performance shocks. Okay, so let's go through some of the specifics on the TRD Pro. First of all, this vehicle is 3 inches wider than it used to be, which is amazing. So you have a lot more control in those high-speed turns and cornering. You have a sway bar that disconnects now. That gives you about 10% more articulation. So we've seen this for a long time out there in the world of Jeeps. It's finally come to Toyota. You have multi-terrain select. It has crawl control. Crawl control works in both high and low four-wheel drive now, which is great. They have these crazy seats that I really want to try out, actually. They have these ISO dynamic seats. So your seats actually will have shock absorbers built into them. And the whole point of this is like racing seats in the Baja 1000, where the whole entire point is as the car is moving, jerking all over the place, it's trying to keep the driver steady so the driver can look down the road, know where they're going. I've never actually ridden in any seats like this, so think about it. The truck has much improved suspension. Then your seat has suspension. I think you could get in this thing and go fast. There is rear bump stops on the rear end of the suspension, so you have rear Fox bump stops. The upper control arms on these are now billeted aluminum, so this is a classic upgrade that almost a ton of people were doing aftermarket. Now it's coming standard with it, and they look amazing. You still have some of the other options. So you have like your aluminum skid plate in the front. That's opposed to like the TrailHunter edition where it actually has steel skid plates. But this one has aluminum because again, you want to maintain that lightness to the vehicle. If you want to do high-speed desert stuff, you need to be light or you're just going to overwork your suspension. It has the TRD catback dual exhaust, so it still should sound pretty good. You get a lot of performance out of that. It has a TRD intake, so that's going to help with your cold air intake. It has a standard locking rear differential, of course. It comes with 33-inch tires. It has the fender flares. You know, this is a fully loaded machine. There's some options that it doesn't have where you go, it's a TRD Pro, it's the highest end one. How come it doesn't have that option? Like one option I wish that it would have had was the snorkel. On the TrailHunter edition, they have this amazingly built-in integrated snorkel. High-speed desert, you want a snorkel really bad because it keeps the dust out of your air filter. Every day in Baja, I end up having to blow my air filter out with my air compressor. I would have loved to see the snorkel on the TRD Pro. But there's some options that you'll see on the TrailHunter that you won't see as options on the Pro. And I think it really is specifically to save on that weight and maintain a high-performing, high-speed off-road machine. There's going to be a lot of options that are available on all of these, like the higher-end inverter. There's a 2,400-watt inverter that's incredible. There's all kinds of treats like that. We can go into some of those, but those are across multiple models. That was a deep dive on the TRD Pro. When you look at the TrailHunter, let's do a deep dive on that really quick. This thing is your overland king. It comes with all the stuff for overlanding. They're trying to build an overlander from the factory so you don't have to. I'm sure everybody's still going to modify them their own way. This is going to be a way to get an overlander straight from the factory. You're going to be able to finance the whole entire thing, including all those accessories now, so you can get into debt quicker. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's up to you. But let's go ahead and talk through this. TrailHunter, snorkel, awesome. Comes with a snorkel. This one has the old man Emu suspension instead of the Fox high-speed suspension. Don't think of this as a downgrade. Think of this as a lateral move. This is a suspension system specifically made to handle all the weight that you're going to load into that vehicle for your long camping trips. So it's going to be able to handle your rooftop tent and your electric fridge and all your stuff that you bring. The old man Emu has the remote reservoir. These are the ESCV, which means it has valving at the bottom of it to help you out and not bottoming out your shock. It's called an in-stop control valve. Anyhow, it's a great thing. You don't really need to pay attention to it, but it will save your butt if you hit a good old dip and something going too fast. This truck's about 1 inch higher in the front than the standard models. It comes standard, of course, with the locking rear differential. This one has an air compressor built into the side of the bed in the back for re-airing up your tires after airing down. This thing's interior, of course, you got USB ports everywhere now. It has built-in aux switches already, so when you're wiring in additional lights and accessories, you're not gonna have to drill through your firewall anymore. You're gonna be able to use up to 3 switches that are already pre-programmed and already pre-wired and built into the vehicle, which is amazing. It already has integrated scene lighting, so there's already lights built into the side panel of the bed, of the rear of the bed, to shine off to the side of your vehicle. It's got a 20-inch light bar on the front. It has rigid fog lights built into the front already. A lot of the accessories that people are adding on are already there. All these vehicles, by the way, now have holes on the top already set up for installing a roof rack. They have the ARB steel rear bumper, and that's going to give you a little bit higher departure angle in the back. They even put in high lift jack lift points on these things. So they really did try to think of everything in the overlanding area. They have optional recovery points on that rear steel bumper that you can add in. TrailHunter, of course, is going to come with the 33-inch tires. It's going to be stylized its own way with its own rims and wheels, whatever you want to call them. It also has steel stamp skids. So these are heavier skid plates, but made to be able to handle hard hits. It has high clearance exhaust tips, so they pulled the exhaust farther up so you can't drag it. And of course it has the standard locking rear differential. This also comes standard with rock sliders. As far as the rear suspension on these, you're going to have a linked suspension in the rear, and they have some added bump stop protection back there, which is amazing. So these are going to be a lot softer ride and a much more high performing shock than traditional leaf spring that they used to have. We also have disc brakes all around, and on the upgraded models we even have additional sized up brakes. So you're going to see a lot more improved braking on this vehicle. There's also the option for these powered tailgates now that will automatically lower with the push of a button, just like you saw on the Tundra, but they added buttons to both sides now. And on top of that, it's push button, it will actually close itself. Or if you have a bunch of firewood in your hand, you can just hit it with your knee. And if you bump it up with your knee, it'll close itself as well. So there's all kinds of upgraded doodads. Some people love these. Some Toyota purists hate them because they always think of them just as, well, it's more things that can break. Either way, the interior of these things is amazing. It looks like a cockpit of a spaceship, and you've got all the features you can think of. You have the air-conditioned seats, you have the heated seats, you have the giant control panels, you have all the big touch button screens. One thing that I love about Toyota is they're still keeping things like just controlling the temperature and push buttons for special lights and stuff. These are all still big knobs and dials that you, while you're driving off-road and bumping around, you can easily go and hit those buttons and turn them on, turn them off. You don't have to be jumping into an electric tablet screen trying to find it 6 menus deep. That drives me nuts. I don't want my eyes on my screen. I want my eyes on the road. But speaking of driving by screen, they do have cameras everywhere on these things nowadays. So when you are on that super high cresting hill where you can't see over the hood and figure out is the road turn and there's a cliff there and all that stuff, you have front facing cameras, side facing cameras, so you will be able to have a trail monitor on your screen. They do have now the 4-door and the 2-door option available in most of these, and then they also have a 5-foot bed and a 6-foot bed selectable in most of these. So that's pretty cool. If you wanted a TrailHunter edition, for example, and you knew you were going to be carrying a lot of gear, or for example had a longer tent that you wanted to match the bed, you could get a 6-foot bed with that instead of a 5-foot bed. Of course, that's going to make your departure angle a little bit less, but it all depends. It's give and take on everything, right? The one thing that's crazy about the extra cab model that they're kind of, I would say, almost bringing back is that is a 2-seater model. So the back extra cab is specifically designed for extra storage. So it has like lockable storage boxes. Even the passenger seat will lay down flat and turn into like a table with a cup holder and everything, turning your whole vehicle into a cockpit basically for the driver. So they've put a lot of thought into different models with very specific purposes. If you're a color person, I will throw up the names of all the colors and you can guess, just like I do, what those colors actually are, because colors nowadays have names like Solar Octane. I don't know what color Solar Octane is, but your guess is as good as mine. There's a whole bunch of cool colors here. Ice Cap. I'm gonna go white-ish, I don't know. Bronze Oxide. Crush, Blue Crush Metallic. Underground. So is underground like dirt? I don't know. Colors are hard. Oh, and then of course they have the unannounced TRD color that will come out probably sometime around Christmas when pricing comes out, the new special TRD color. Okay, so the quick run through on the other models that we didn't talk about yet, just in case you're here, because you really wanted that SR fleet vehicle look. You've got the SR, basically the Tacoma version of a work truck. The SR and the SR5 have a lower engine, so they're only 228 horsepower, so similar performance to the V6 Tacomas that are out there right now, just with the new body style. Then you go up to the TRD Pre-Runner, which is back after being gone for, I think, over a decade. The TRD Pre-Runner is a really interesting model because it's two-wheel drive, like a lot of the older Pre-Runners were in the desert, but it's still made for off-roading. So TRD, it's two-wheel drive, but it's got the locking differential. It comes only in the extra cab model. It comes with Bilstein monotube shocks that still have a remote reservoir, so it's an upgraded off-road machine. The TRD Sport, I think, is really the one that's made for your road warrior. If you want a Tacoma, but you're really mostly going to stay on the road, this thing has the sport tuned shocks for great cornering on the freeways and everything that you would want there. You're going to notice it has that big piece of plastic that hangs down in the front. That's what gives you your much better gas mileage and much less road noise and everything like that. It's got a standard locking rear differential just in case you ever get stuck in a jam. Comes standard with road tires. This is also the first option where that high-end IMAX engine becomes available. The TRD Off-Road, I think, is a sweet spot where a lot of people, it was their best-selling model in the 4Runner, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's best-selling one here, because price point-wise, it's going to be much cheaper than the TrailHunter and the TRD Pro, but it still is pretty off-road worthy. It has the IMAX available. It has the 33-inch tires available. It has Bilstein remote res upgraded shocks even from the Pre-Runner. It's 1 inch higher in the front, so it basically already has that leveling lift that so many people put on aftermarket, and it's got locking rear differential. So those are the other models. There's a lot to go through here. If I had to say, I mean, the fact that they gave us the manual transmission, the fact that they gave us the higher seating, these are all the common complaints and requests that everybody wanted to see. And then, of course, more horsepower. And the more horsepower is great, but the super high-end torque, I think, is even better. So this car's not going to feel sluggish. This truck's not going to feel sluggish anymore. It's going to have some oomph behind it. The things that I think are crazy, not to be full Toyota homeboy here and just say everything's amazing, they, of course, gave us that funky bed bar, just kind of like the Shelby version of the Ford Raptor. I don't know if anybody was asking for that, but we got it. They gave us a snorkel on the TrailHunter, but not on a Desert Racing TRD Pro. Kind of bummed about that. We'll see if that changes between now and when they actually release. And then, of course, the one thing that I think nobody's going to like is probably the price for these when that's announced coming probably late winter. Style-wise, I do think they did a lot of great things on the style. A lot of people complained about the Tundra. Me personally, I don't really mind the new Tundra, but people hated the huge grille. I think they gave the Tacoma where it was able to retain its Tacoma identity. It still has a similar grille to what it's had for many generations. But I think when they modernized it, they made some good choices. And they made a lot of choices around giving us the other things that we wanted, like having standard 33s on it and being able to fit those tires. So I'm impressed. I think Toyota did an incredible job actually listening to consumers and what we wanted. And one way that they did that is they looked at what does everybody do to a Tacoma after they buy it from us. And they looked at all the stuff that we rip off and stick on, and they went, you know what, maybe we could do some of that for you. So props to Toyota. I got to give it to them. Thanks for listening to consumers and turning out a good product. Now we just got to see if that Turbo 4 is as reliable as all their other engines have been. If it is, we may have another long-lasting legendary Tacoma here. Okay, you want to know a little tidbit that probably most people aren't covering in these videos. There's actually a little secret pocket over on the side of the TRD Pro, and it's gonna have a QR code that you can scan that will have a whole bunch of things that you can 3D print. So you can 3D print accessories for your Tacoma. I think that that's pretty cool. If you're a father-son, father-daughter, you got a new truck, you can go. We actually have 3D printers that are available at our local tech library. So I can take the design of some of this stuff from there, go 3D print it with my kids at the library, and bring back these cool little accessories that Toyota was smart enough to pull together for it with 3D printing instructions. So that's pretty cool. It has things like a lantern, it has things like toolkits, all kinds of a multi-tool, all kinds of cool little doodads.